This is Basil, and Basil is how old?
She's 5.
She's a 5-year-old Chihuahua, and she has something very unusual. We try to capture it on camera, but she isn't cooperating because we've been here for a while and I gave her a bully stick. But she likes to scream, I call it singing, when her guardian leaves, her guardian right here. Now there's another guardian who's filming this and who she does not do this behavior for. So we spent a lot of time off camera talking about rules, structure. A lot of people kind of create a scenario where they confuse the dog into thinking the dog's in charge of them, but they don't have any rules. They under-exercise the dog. She actually probably gets the appropriate amount of exercise. A little bit more can help. But they don't have any rules, and when the dog nudges them to tell them to pet, they do, at least some of the time. So that can confuse the dog into thinking that it's in charge, and then when the person leaves or does things the dog doesn't like and the dog disagrees and we don't listen to them, that can stress them out. Now, because there's only one person that she does this for, it tells me she's a little bit more bonded to this particular guardian than the guardian's filming. It's not that she loves that one anymore, but a lot of times human females are a little bit more tactile, a little bit more loving, give a little bit more attention than men are. And so sometimes the dog can resonate with us. Sometimes it's a female thing. There can be multiple reasons for it. But in this video, I just want to cover the things that you can do to help prevent this sort of behavior. Now, people often ask me, David, how do you stop a dog fight? And I was telling them, like, I don't know. And they're like, but you're supposed to be really good at fixing dog problems. What I do, come. Remember, anytime you give a treat, always give the treat first. For any activity, they should hear the command word and only the command word afterwards. Not good, come, just come. So what I was telling people is I would stop the dog fight from even starting by recognizing the signals and the signs and addressing those first. So dogs have what I call 10 levels of energy. 0 is asleep, 10 is crazy if you've ever seen it. This is maybe like a level 1, right? So most of the time we wait, the screaming probably kicks in when she's about level 8 or 9 energy. She's close to her maximum. And just like us, if I get in an argument with somebody and it gets so intense, I might have to go take a walk around the neighborhood to cool down because I'm so aroused or engaged in the argument. So the key is if somebody comes in and we start arguing and somebody comes in the very first word and says, hey, let's not argue, okay, I can let it go. But if I've been arguing for a while, it takes me a long time to get down. So recognizing your dog's body language and signals allows you to recognize the dog is heading towards level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5 energy, and so on and so forth. And the idea is to recognize when they're going in that direction, stopping them before they get too wound up. Now, I'm going to treat this almost as if this is separation anxiety, which it could be. Basically, separation anxiety, the dogs often recognize before we actually leave that we're leaving because they recognize the ritual that we go through. Typically, when we're leaving, we sit in a certain spot. We put on a certain pair of shoes. If we wear a uniform, we're wearing our scrubs or a cop uniform or whatever it is. We grab our purse. My purses are all over the place. But we grab sunglasses, keys, our iPhone, or Android, your water bottle, or all these little things. And this becomes the ritual. Often happens at certain times and certain days of the week, and I think that's the case here. Dogs do have an internal clock, and they can start recognizing rhythms to sort of things. So this is a similar principle as if I have somebody says, should we take the dog for a W-A-L-K? I would say walk like 1,000 times a day and break the association. We're going to use the same principle here. So if the dog starts screaming, I want the guardian, one of the times when this guardian is getting ready to go for work, is the other guardian pull out the phone and record it from about this distance and not say a word and just record. And just do your normal routine, what you normally do. Sit in your normal spot, grab your clothes, as realistic and close to normal as you possibly can. And make sure when you're doing this, if you can, that you can see the dog and the person in the shot at the same time. So you can see she picked up her purse and the dog's ears flip back. And a little bit of the head duck and a little bit of a whimper. So once we identify what the triggers are, the things that start the dog's ears to flip back or any sort of response from the dog in a negative way, we can start then recreating those and helping the dog practice those either with counter conditioning or desensitization. So I often do this, like I've worked with some Chihuahuas that will nip or bite at me if I were to try to get up. So the way I do that is I might pull out a treat and give the dog the treat and then raise up like this and then go back down. I just got done talking off camera about breaking the thing down to individual steps. So that lean up that I was doing is one of the steps that I go through when I'm actually getting up. So what I'm doing is I'm at first, I'm preceding the activity. Something good happens, and then the guy goes up and then gets back down. And then we do that again. Something good happens, the guy gets up, and then gets back down. And what you'll see is the dog starts backing away a little bit. Didn't move away quite as far away. Now, this is the first way that we do it, was we start doing the activity first. We give the dog the treat, then we do a step of the activity. Eventually, once we can do the whole activity, what we would do without the dog reacting, then what I would do is I would stand up, then I would give the dog the treat. So this is a process where basically we're saying, before the dog was biting at me when I stood up, because he's like, she in this case, I didn't give her permission to stand up. Well, so first we proceed it with the treats and we break down individual steps so she doesn't feel threatened. And when she gets used to not reacting when I stand up, then after I stand up, I give her the treat. And that basically says standing up is the command signal that you're about to get a treat. So instead of barking and reacting and saying, I don't like that, you should be like, thank God he stood up, I'm about to get paid. So what we want to do is create a positive association with all the individual elements that are associated with leaving. So instead of the dog saying, oh, she picked up her shoes, oh, she picked up her phone, oh, she picked up her keys, oh, she got her sunglasses, oh no, she's gonna leave me. And then work her way up in a frenzy. It's like, oh, she picked up the keys and she put them back down. She picked up the keys, put them back down. After a while, I don't think that's that big of a deal. Now we can proceed it with a treat, but I don't think it's necessarily for this step. Now, if your dog does react, then go to the treat. But what we want to do is start off with the treat before and then eventually end up with the treat after. And that's important that we end up with the treat after. Otherwise, it gets very confusing for the dog. So if it's picking up your keys, once you've done the video, you have a list of all the triggers. Then I want you to do is practice them independent of all the other steps. Let's say the third step is picking up the cell phone. And so, okay, well, let's practice that one out of context. So she goes over and just stands up and picks up the cell phone while looking at the dog and then puts it down and then sits down. Now, a lot of times the dog says, oh, cell phone, and just gets up. So it went from level 1 energy, level 2, level 3, level 4 when it saw you do this, and now it's at level 4, and then you sit down. It's still level 4. What you need to do is wait for the dog to return to a calm state of mind. What most people do is wait for the dog to get calmer. So go from 4 to 3 or 2. Well, it's still not calm. It's calmer. So then the dog is going to amp itself up faster, just like waiting for them and stopping early allows them to calm down faster. So if the dog was at level 4, we wait for the dog to get all the way back to level 1 before we reach for that phone again. So we're helping the dog essentially practice staying calm through that situation. And when they do get warmed up, we wait for them to return to a completely calm state before we try again. Don't just focus just on the phone. Do a little bit of the phone, do a little bit of grabbing your sunglasses, a little bit of grabbing your jacket, or all the other things that are associated with you leaving. Anybody. Until you get to the point where the dog is like, oh, she grabs her phone a lot, doesn't. Used to mean she always leaves. That's classical conditioning. Now she just picks up her phone and stands up, and then she sits right back down. Eventually, you can combine two of those things together. And I would do them probably still out of context. Pick up your phone and then go put your shoes on, or do them in a different order. But eventually you want to start stringing all those things together, and eventually you actually go to the door and put your hand on the handle, but the dog is completely calm throughout, and then you go sit back down. Next stage is eventually you do them all, and then you go open the door halfway, and then close the door. Eventually you get to the point where you can open the door, and you go outside and close the door, close it, close the screen door, wait 1 second, and then come right back inside. Now this would be helpful if you had a security camera so you could see what the dog is doing, because the idea is, I'm going to sit down, my ankle's going to fall off. But the idea is to help the dog practice being completely calm throughout the entire ritual, including the person leaving. So she gets up, and at first she leaves, she closes the door, waits for 1 second, turns around, come back inside, put your shoes down, sit down, and don't pet the dog and make a big deal out of it. Just I left and I came right back. So the idea is hopefully to come back before the dog freaks out, and if you took your time to break down all the individual steps, it should be in the same state of mind. If it's not, that means you can go back and practice desensitizing the departure steps. Now, one of the best things to do is do this on days when you're going to lead, it's going to take you a while to get up to the point. When you get to the point where you're leaving, you want to recreate this on days when you're not actually leaving. So at first you leave for 1 second, then 3 seconds, then 5 seconds, then 10 seconds, then 15. Then I usually go 15, 30, 45, 1 minute, then go by 1 minute increments. Now, the idea is you're going to wait right outside. So you should have Wi-Fi so you can check it out on your phone. Put a little chair or cushion out there, put a cocktail out there ahead of time so you can actually be enjoying yourself. It's Southern California, it'll be a little bit warm, but hey. The idea is if you actually go to the laundromat or go to get a sandwich and the dog starts freaking out, and even if you look on your security camera, you see it, it's going to take you several minutes to get back, and now the dog is practicing the crying or the freaking out of the signal. If you're just sitting right outside, as soon as the dog starts crying, you want to come in as soon as you can. Normally, I would not recommend that, but during this, because we're going to do it once, and we're going to recognize, okay, when she was good for up to 7 minutes. When we got to 8 minutes, that's when she freaked out. So now I'm going to go back and practice the same ritual once she's returned to a completely calm state. But this time, I'm going to go, instead of going to 8 minutes, we're going to go to 7 minutes and just practice more at 7 minutes until she's more consistent at 7 minutes. Then go to 7:15, 7:30, 7:45, and then 8 minutes, and so on and so forth. So you always need to keep a counter so you know where you're at. Because if the dog freaks out, you have to back up and practice that previous step. Normally, if the dog starts crying and you come back in, that's rewarding the dog for doing it. And if you did it a lot, it would do the same thing. But in this case, we're working on desensitizing. So as soon as the dog does it, we want to come back as soon as we possibly can and recognize we need more work at a previous stage. All right, now one other thing that you do, can you sit? She won't sit here because this is the bamboo floor. She doesn't like, she's a Chihuahua, they don't have great circulation. So a lot of Chihuahuas don't like sitting on something unless it's a soft surface. So I recommend getting like some carpet or remnant piece. So right now there's only that place for her to really hang out. There's no other place in your entire place for her to hang out other than the furniture. That's not realistic or reasonable. I would have a couple of sections of that carpet so she could lay it here, lay it there. Otherwise, you're kind of limiting her options because she refuses to do it. But one of the other things that she likes to do is she likes to get up in 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
No, not that early. It's like 8:30. 8:30.
One of the guardian who's filming here doesn't have to get up that early. This guardian does. Well, she doesn't actually have to get that early. And she cries. And that gets this guardian up because she doesn't want her partner to have to listen to this. She's very considerate. But at the same time, if the dog, like I just got done saying, if every time I cry, it causes people to get up, well then crying is my way of being like the rooster, and I'm going to do my call in the morning and wake everybody the F up. So a couple things you can do for this is, one of the things is I would make sure that we don't get up when the dog does that. The problem is, our partner needs to sleep, and it's not going to be able to sleep too well with the dog screaming, also the neighbors and all the rest of this fun stuff. What I would really do is, if your neighbors, if you have thin walls, is talk to your neighbors and say, look, our dog does this, we hired a dog psychologist, this is what he suggested, but we may have some sounds in the morning. I wanted to give you my cell phone number and let you know if it's really invasive, let me know and we will stop it, but we're hoping that we can spend a week really working on this and then we'll never have to deal with it again. So if you can please bear with us, here's some brownies or whatever it is. So I find that if you give people your cell phone number ahead of time and a little bit of a gift and tell them that you've hired somebody and are working on it, they will give you a lot more credence and a little bit more, a wider berth. So then the idea is you can either do a couple things. You can exercise the dog a lot the day before, so that and the day before that she's normally going to react to this sort of thing. The other thing you can do is just kind of tough it out, which kind of is a bummer for one of us. Well, bummer for both of you. Or you can get noise canceling headphones. I had a client who had terminal cancer, and her dog was a demand barker, and she's dealing with a lot of stress, obviously, at the end of her life, and she was young. And so her awesome boyfriend bought her these noise canceling headphones. So she'd be watching TV, the dog would just incessantly bark at her, and she'd have to get up and do stuff. So she just started putting these things on, because any reaction is validated. Even you're like, or you give the dog a dirty look, or you look at it, you shift, roll over in bed. It's working. She moved. Keep barking. Keep singing. So what she did, she just put these things on, and it had it set up where she could listen to TV and didn't blink at all. And she said within a week, the dog stopped doing that behavior because it no longer got the response that it was looking for. Now, I went through putting with a purpose and passive training, which both guardians is going to be really important for them to work on because that is an analog to what we're doing here. If the dog thinks I can tell people to pet me and they do it, well, then I can tell them to get up and they'll do it as well. But if I have to ask for them to pet me versus telling them, maybe that will help, well, that should help with this as well. But really what you're looking to do is create a scenario where, you know what, it's no longer gonna work for us. It's no longer gonna get us up. And it's usually you like to give the dog a replacement behavior. And this one, it's just the dog's up earlier than you are. And so maybe trying to take it, those days that the dog's gonna do that, taking it for a long walk right before bedtime can help burn off a little bit more energy and make the dog a little bit more tired. But really, I would just try to set up a couple scenarios where you're going to be in the bedroom and you have the noise canceling headphones and she barks and does what she wants or sings and you don't respond at all. I'm really hoping, though, something else you can do, and I guess I'll go through it right now because this is a longer video anyways, we'll just add it in there. So when she does sing, does she ever sing when you're here?
When I'm just hanging out here?
Yeah. So what you could do is when she's singing, I would recommend using a clicker for this. So the clicker is, and these should be really easy to get on Amazon. They're a couple bucks. The clickers just indicate the precise second the dog did what you wanted. So she's singing, 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 singing. As soon as she stops, and then give her a treat and say silence or quiet or hush or cállate if you want to use a little Spanish. And then she'll go back to singing, sing, 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 sing. I'm not getting a treat, not getting a treat. Breath to sing, and then another treat. So the clickers indicate the second that they stop singing, and then you give the treat right away. And you say the command word after the treat goes in the mouth. So this way, with enough repetition, when we say silence, the dog knows silence means if there's a absence of singing, I will get a treat. Now at first you get a fraction of a second silence, and then give the dog a treat. After a while, it's like 1, 2 seconds, click and treat. Then 1, 2, 3, click and treat. So you're going to start elongating the period of silence. And eventually you can say silence or hush or whatever the sound is, and the dog knows what you want. Now that gets also into do I care about listening to my humans? That's enforcing rules, petting with a purpose, passive training, all the rest of the stuff that we talked about off camera. But if the guardians get in a habit of doing all the rest of those things, and then also desensitize to the triggers for when you leave, and then when she is here, get a clicker, and the second she stops, build in a silence command. Now you're kind of attacking the problem on multiple angles, and you should be able to make a lot more progress. I would ask Basil here to sit, but she doesn't like sitting on this hard floor, so I'll just try to target her over here. Well, this pretty girl is Basil, and these are some tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that likes to scream or bark at you for attention or to prevent you from leaving.